Hey everyone, happy Friday. I hope your week went well. I'm glad to see you.
Okay, so for class today, we're going to look a little bit at Mesopotamia and then the development of civilizations there, and more specifically, Hammurabi's code. So, my first question for you guys today that I want you to think about is what do you know about Hammurabi's code? Have you heard of it before? Start thinking about that for a minute. All right, so let's start with a little bit of a review. Looking at Mesopotamia, this is our first civilization that develops, right? There's still people living, things like that. Obviously, we've got small communities, but the first place to really develop into a civilization is Mesopotamia, and it becomes known as the land between the two rivers. The Sumerians developed this civilization around 3000 BC. They developed the civilization here because the land in Mesopotamia had rich soil compared to the areas surrounding it. With the two rivers, they were able to grow a lot in the soil because it had all of the nutrients and things that they needed there. And the two rivers that it's between is the Tigris River and the Euphrates River. Okay, now this is some vocabulary that you guys might have come across in your reading, some things you might know, you might not. If you need to review, just pause it so you can double check the vocabulary. So we've got Fertile Crescent, city-states, theocracy, and ziggurat. Now a couple others. We have empire, code of Hammurabi, which is what we're going to be looking at closer today, cuneiform, and polytheistic. Two more for you today, patriarchal and nomad. And again, if you need to review any of those words, just go back, pause the video so that you can see them. We're also going to look very quickly at the timeline. So just so you know, BC and BCE are interchangeable. If you're looking at it, it's just more commonly before Common Era now, so that's where the E comes from. So in 4500 BCE, got the Tigris and Euphrates were discovered by nomads. Go into 3500 BC, 3300 BC, and then 3000 BC. Then we get into 2500 BC. It's where we've got our Akkadians not only taking the first civilization, but into the first empire. Then we get into Hammurabi's rule. 1754 BC, Hammurabi's law, which again is what we're going to be looking at more today. And then 605 BC, we get Nebuchadnezzar taking over in Babylon or Babylonia. Again, hopefully you guys have read this in your textbook. It should be pretty familiar. It's a quick review, but if you're not sure, just double check, go back, pause the video where you need to. Okay, in Mesopotamia, we also get the invention of the wheel. This is huge. We know we use wheels today. Again, life changer. Almost as big as the agricultural revolution. It wasn't perfected. It took a while to get them to exactly where we are today, but they used it for irrigation, pottery, milling, transportation. It really made a huge difference for them. Okay, and then we also see that their economy was based on farming, trade, and industry also become important, right? So because we're not searching and hunting for food, we have more time to develop some skills and really specialize. We also get our first written language, which is huge. That's cuneiform. Comes around about when Mesopotamia itself develops, okay, 3000 BC. They use clay tablets and then they kind of just wrote into it with sharp things like a stylus that you would use as the clay was soft, and then they'd put it into the sun to harden. And again, this is our first written language, which is why we're able to know so much about the Mesopotamians. We've got some influential individuals. Now there's quite a few, but you've got Gilgamesh, and we're not going to look too closely at him, but there was the Epic of Gilgamesh that was written. It's one of our first epics, which is like a really long poem. Think Beowulf, same kind of thing, but he was very important. And then, of course, we've got King Hammurabi, who's going to be key today. He's most known for his Code of Hammurabi, and this is important because it's the first set of laws that are distinct. They're the same, right? It's like, hey, there are rules, you have to follow them. Everyone in my empire is following the same rules, so we're all kind of even here.
Okay, so we're going to review a little bit more, and we're going to do that with historical rap. Just hold on. Don't judge it yet. Wait till you watch it.
Yeah. We chillin' like a summer in our Sumerian city-states. Invented the art, we put it on our city gates. We built the temple ziggurats, we swimming when it's very hot. In the Tigris and Euphrates, baby. In the Tigris and Euphrates, baby. In the Tigris and Euphrates, baby. Each city is unique, we don't have to wear a uniform. But when we're writing it, we write it in cuneiform.
I roll through invading them. I'm Sargon the Great, empire builder for the Akkadians.
Sorry, Sargon, your empire couldn't last. Our Babylonian tracks put Babylon on the maps. I'm Hammurabi, you can call me Poppy. Made a strict code cause your laws were sloppy. Hammurabi's code matches tooth for tooth. Poke an eye out and get yours poked out too. We're the Assyrians assassins, seriously dangerous when we're blasting. We took your man captive, burnt Babylon, built a library instead. With that old book, Epic of Gilgamesh. What? We in that fertile crescent. Sargon, you smell, need some herbal essence. I keep it quick like a turtle's breakfast.
Time's up, better learn your lessons.
What? We in that fertile crescent. Sargon, you smell, need some herbal essence. I keep it quick like a turtle's breakfast.
Time's up, better learn your lessons.
Nobody rule better, I'm Nebuchadnezzar. Me and my Chaldeans are sharper than cheddar. What's so holy like Swiss cheese? One day my wife said, Neb, I miss trees. This city life is too hard for me. All I see is brown, baby, I need garden greens. So I built the hanging gardens of Babylon for my girl. It's one of the seven wonders of the world.
Phoenicians, where we get our alphabet from. Phoenicians, trading and standing strong. Phoenicians, we set sail on seas, build ships with ease, sail from Sidon to Sicily. The best craftsmen, we make the best crafts. We blow the most glass, we make the most cash. Trade the glass and crafts, watch a paper stack, dye cloth. People like, I gots to have that. What? We in that fertile crescent.
Sargon, you smell, need some herbal essence. I keep it quick like a turtle's breakfast.
Time's up, better learn your lessons. What? We in that fertile crescent.
Sargon, you smell, need some herbal essence. I keep it quick like a turtle's breakfast.
Time's up, better learn your lessons.
You don't have to barter, Lydians made sense. Cause Lydians printed coins like a mint. Between Egypt and Babylon, we're the Hebrews. Tribes and crews, today we'd be called Jews. Wandering the desert, avoiding bandits. To Moses showed us 10 commandments. Divided into 12 tribes, we got lost. Until King Saul finally reunited us. Next, David built Jerusalem. In the Bible, he defeats Goliath. You heard of him? His son Solomon built the temple, we weren't saved. Chaldeans invaded and made us slaves.
What? We in that fertile crescent.
Sargon, you smell, need some herbal essence. I keep it quick like a turtle's breakfast.
Time's up, better learn your lessons. What? We in that fertile crescent.
Sargon, you smell, need some herbal essence. I keep it quick like a turtle's breakfast.
Time's up, better.
So let's review a little bit. The Fertile Crescent got its name because A, it's an arid valley in the Middle East. B, it's a land of rich soil that's ideal for agriculture. C, the people who lived there had lots of children. Or D, it was one of the earliest civilizations. If you picked B, you are correct. It's called the Fertile Crescent because it's a land of rich soil that's ideal for agriculture. Okay, I've got another one for you. Bartering, an early form of trade, occurred because A, people didn't want to part with their extra items. B, trade made people feel more secure. C, people had surpluses that they could exchange for other things. Or D, Sumerian society was class-based and had different economic levels. Why did bartering occur? If you thought C, you are correct. People had surpluses that they could exchange for other things. Now again, all of these things are true facts, but bartering occurred because of the surplus, which is possible because of the specialization that agriculture gave us. All right, last one. Hammurabi's code is a famous system of laws because it A, is thought to be one of the earliest written set of laws, B, led directly to the development of democracy, C, had such lenient punishments which allowed for personal freedom, or D, was considered unfair, causing people to rebel in the world's first insurrection. If you thought A, you are correct. It is famous because it's thought to be one of the earliest written set of laws. Now, the thing with history, right, you'll see we say it's thought to be because there could be others. But Hammurabi's code is the earliest written set of laws that we have found so far. This could change in the future, but it has not as of yet. So obviously, hopefully you know by now we're talking about Hammurabi's code today. And I'm just curious, like, have you heard of it? Had you not heard of it before? Either way, hopefully you're going to learn some new things today. I think you will. So our objective is that we're going to use Hammurabi's code to consider religious, economic, and social facets of life in the ancient world. So this code of laws is going to help us learn about Babylonian religion, Babylonian economy, and Babylonian social life, okay, or social structure. So who was Hammurabi? Hammurabi was a member of the Amorite dynasty who united all of Mesopotamia under the Babylonian Empire. So previous to Hammurabi, Babylon or Babylonia was just a city in Mesopotamia. When he takes over and becomes king, he then takes over the rest of Mesopotamia and creates an empire. He became the king of Babylon in 1792 BCE, and he ruled until 1750 BCE. So he ruled for about 32 years. Okay, and again, it's kind of like a number line. When you're BCE, you're going negative. So as the numbers get smaller, it gets closer to our current dates, if that makes sense. And then from 0, it goes on and starts going 1, 2, 3, 4. So exactly like a number line you'd see in math. Hammurabi is most famous for his law code, which is one of the oldest in the world. It's a list of 282 laws that deal with society in their different parts. Not only is it just like what you should or shouldn't do, it has the punishments in there. And the government set up certain punishments for crimes so that the strong might not injure the weak. Before this code, it was kind of like dog eat dog, right? People could take revenge if they wanted to. There was no, you did this, so now you have to face this consequence. Okay, this standardized the rules so that everyone knew the crimes and the penalties, and this was empire-wide. Hey, what does it look like? So there are tons of copies of his code around Mesopotamia, right? It's an entire empire. It wasn't just one thing that people had to travel thousands of miles to come see. That wouldn't make any sense. So there are tons of them, and they found multiple, and they're mostly inscriptions on baked clay tablets. Okay, again, this is how they wrote. They didn't have paper, they didn't have the internet. He couldn't just email out his laws. So they put them on these clay tablets. The most the most well-known surviving copy is the one that you see here, and it's an inscription on a stone slab called a stela. It's 7 feet high and 2.5 feet wide and 1.5 feet thick at the base. At the top, you see Hammurabi and then the Mesopotamian or the Babylonian god Shamash. And the laws are written vertically and read right to left. So vertical like us, but right to left versus we read left to right. In the 12th century BCE, okay, we have the king of Elam located in present-day Iran. He took the stela, he took these. Like many artifacts, it was eventually lost. So he wasn't using them, they weren't his laws. It's almost like a collector. He had it as part of his collection. But after his obtaining of the laws, we don't know what happened to them. But we do know that in 1901, a French archaeologist found the laws in Susa, Iran. They took them to France, and that particular one is now in the Louvre in Paris. So if you wanted to, you could go see it if you happen to be in Paris. Okay, so that's a little bit of a background of the laws. And now we're going to play a little game. It's called What Would Hammurabi Do? So we know he was a king. He created the empire of Babylon. And we know that he creates these laws to protect the weak from the strong. And we also know that he's got, right, the specific crime. And then he also outlines the punishment. So what's going to happen is I'm going to give you a scenario. I want you to pause the screen on the scenario and tell me what you think Hammurabi would do, okay? Or what would you do in this scenario? And then I'll tell you what Hammurabi actually did. So scenario 1. What should be done to the carpenter who builds a house that falls and kills the owner? Okay? Pause the screen, take a second, tell me what you think. Well, Hammurabi says, if a builder builds a house for a man and does not make its construction sound, and the house which he has built collapses and causes the death of the owner of the house, the builder shall be put to death. So if you build a house and it falls and kills the owner, you will also be killed. Are we kind of getting a sense of Hammurabi yet? All right, scenario 2. What should be done when a sister of God, right, similar to a nun or a priestess, enters the wine shop for a drink? What would Hammurabi do? Pause the screen and take a second to think. Well, I'm thinking you might be a little bit more lenient than Hammurabi. According to Hammurabi, if a sister of God or a nun or priestess who is not living in a convent opens a wine shop or enters a wine shop for a drink, they shall burn that woman. He's getting kind of intense, right? Scenario 3. What happens if a man is unable to pay his debts? Pause the video, take a second to think. Well, according to Hammurabi, if a man is in debt and unable to pay his creditors, he shall sell his wife, son, or daughter, or bind them over to service. For 3 years they shall work in the houses of their purchaser or master, and in the 4th year they shall be given their freedom. Okay, so if a man owes some money, he can sell his family to pay off his debts. Scenario 4. What happens to the wine seller who fails to arrest bad characters gathered at her shop? What do you think Hammurabi would do? Pause the screen. Well, Hammurabi says if you don't arrest those characters, that wine cellar shall be put to death. Again, kind of intense. Scenario 5, what should be done about a wife who ignores her duties and belittles her husband? My goodness. Now we tend to think, uh-oh, is he going to kill her too? He seems to like to kill people. But if the wife is neglecting her home and belittling her husband, they shall throw that woman into the water. Now, it doesn't really say here, but I'm going to assume that it's not just like throwing her in a puddle or something like that. Maybe they don't know how to swim. Maybe it's some rushing water. It's going to be some form of punishment. Okay, scenario 6. What should be done if a son is adopted and then the birth parents want him back? What do you think? Hopefully this one's not kill him because, again, that's where we're going. And it's not, right? Hammurabi says if a man takes in his own home a young boy as a son and rears him, right? So raises him, one may not bring claim for that adopted son. So you can't, his birth family could not ask for him back if he had been raised by someone else. Uh-oh. Scenario 7. What should happen to a boy who slaps his father? And this is actually in the code. Okay, if a boy strikes his father, his hands shall be hewn off. That means cut off, right? Take the hand that strikes the father. All right, so our last scenario in this little game. How is the truth determined when one man brings an accusation against another? How do you figure out who's telling the truth? Well, Hammurabi says, if you accuse a man, the man you are accusing will jump in the river. If he sinks in the river, the person that accused him will take possession of that house, of the man in the river's house. But if the river proves that the accused is not guilty, so if he escapes unhurt, if he doesn't sink, then he who had brought the accusation shall be put to death, while he who leapt in the river shall take possession of the house that had belonged to his accuser. So if person A accuses person B of a crime, person B jumps in the river. If they sink or if they drown, person A gets all of person B's stuff. But if person B survives and makes it out of the river unhurt, then person A is put to death for lying, and then person B takes all of person A's stuff. Again, kind of intense, but it makes sense to people in this time, right? It helps them follow the rules, know what their punishments will be, and it unites the empire into one strong Babylonian empire. Okay, so we are going to look at some of the codes again, but not so much in the game, what would he do way. We're going to look at the code to see what it tells us about Babylonia, about Hammurabi's time, and how people were living back then. So what does it mean to evaluate evidence? As historians, we're trying to understand what happened based on different accounts. And we need to look at the accounts and the information they provide, but we need to look at it carefully. On top of that, we need to make sure we're looking at more than one account because information gets skewed, perspective, time period, different things give us different pieces of information. Sometimes people lie, sometimes people leave out bits that they don't think are important but become important to us later on. Okay, but so today we're going to look again at Hammurabi's code. And the question we're trying to answer is what can we learn about Babylonia from Hammurabi's code? So the first thing we're going to look at is document A, and I'm going to walk you guys through this one. Hammurabi's code, we're looking at some of the things that he talks about in regards to religion, and this specifically comes from the introduction of Hammurabi's code. Okay, so as we read, pay attention to the religion of Babylonia. What did people believe in? Who were their gods? Some vocabulary that you might need is in the bottom left corner, so sublime, decreed, and exalted. When Anu the Sublime, and Bel the Lord of heaven and earth, who decreed the fate of the land, assigned to Marduk, the overruling son of Ea, god of righteousness, power over earthly man, and made him great, they called Babylon by his celebrated name, made it great on earth, and founded an everlasting kingdom in it. Then Anu and Bel called by name me, Hammurabi, the exalted prince, who feared God, to bring about the rule of righteousness in the land, to destroy the wicked and the evil doers, so that the strong should not harm the weak, so that I should rule over the black-headed people like Shamash, and enlighten the land, to further the well-being of mankind. Okay, so as we look at this, we're going to try and figure out more about the religion during Hammurabi's time. So as I'm reading, the first thing I notice is that we've got some names. We have Anu the Sublime and Bel the Lord of heaven and earth. We have Ea, God of righteousness. Okay, so this is telling me that there's multiple gods, right? I'm thinking they're polytheistic because I've got 3 listed within the first sentence. What else can I tell about their religion? Well, I see here that Hammurabi is saying that Bel called by my name to bring about the rule of righteousness in the land. So Hammurabi is saying that he got the right to rule from the gods. This is similar to the Egyptians, right? The gods are telling them who can rule. We see this in ancient China as well. It's what our theocracy is, right? Divine power instills the right for man to rule or be king. All right, so what else can I tell from this? Well, if I look, I see that not only did the gods call him to rule, but they called him to rule to destroy the wicked and the evil doers, so that the strong should not harm the weak. Okay, so Hammurabi wants to make these laws to protect the weak and the oppressed. It seems like he sees some inequalities and wants to fix that. So this is showing me a lot about the religion. They're polytheistic. They're a little bit of a, or it seems like they're a theocracy. It seems like Hammurabi wants to protect the weak. That's something that he thinks is very important. But that doesn't tell me everything I need to know. And I also want to make sure that if I am really studying this, that I'm looking at other sources to corroborate this information, right? Okay, so source 1 says this is true, but I need to find a couple other places that say that just to make sure. All right, so we're going to look at document B. And as you look at document B, I want you to pay attention to what was important to Babylonians as they tried to make a living. Okay, so what can we tell about their economy from here? So I'll read this for you. If you don't want to hear me read it, you can fast forward a little bit. You can pause and just read it yourself. Again, we've got some key vocabulary in the left corner: till, fallow, and fell. So I'm not going to go through this one with you, but I do want you to know what you can tell about the economy, and that's going to be important for the exit ticket today. So coming again from Hammurabi's code, 42. If anyone take over a field to till it, and obtain no harvest from it, it must be proved that he did no work on the field, and he must deliver grain, just as his neighbor raised, to the owner of the field. 43. If he do not till the field, but let it lie fallow, he shall give grain like his neighbors to the owner of the field, and the field which he let lie fallow he must plow and sow and return to its owner. 53. If anyone be too lazy to keep his dam in proper condition, if then the dam break and all the fields be flooded, then shall he in whose dam the break occurred be sold for money, and the money shall replace the corn which he has caused to be ruined. If he be not able to replace the corn, then he and his possessions shall be divided among the farmers whose corn he has flooded. 59. If any man without the knowledge of the owner of a garden fell a tree in a garden, he shall pay half a mina in money. Now, I don't know for sure, but we're going to assume that mina is their currency. So how we would say $10, $50, whatever that might be, a mina is something like dollars or coin, things like that. Okay, so we're going to look at document C as well, and this is still the same document, it's just a different section of the code. And as we read, I want you to pay attention to how society was structured. Was everyone treated equally? And the only vocabulary that might give you some trouble in here would be dowry. And again, I'm not going to walk you through what it's telling us about society. I will read it. If you want, you can pause it. You don't have to listen to me read. Just read it on your own. But you will want to know what we can learn about the society for the exit code. Okay, so 117. If anyone fails to pay a debt and sells himself, his wife, his son, or daughter for money, or give them away for forced labor, they shall work for 3 years in the house of the man who bought them, and in the 4th year they shall be set free. 138. If a man wishes to separate from his wife, who has borne him no children, he shall give her the amount of her purchase money and the dowry which she brought from her father's house, and let her go. 196. If a man put out the eye of another man, his eye shall be put out. 198. If he put out the eye of a freedman, or break the bone of a freedman, he shall pay 1 gold mina. 199. If he put out the eye of a man's slave, or break the bone of a man's slave, he shall pay 1/2 of it being the slave's value. 202. If anyone strike the body of a man higher in rank than he shall receive 60 blows with an ox whip in public. 203. If a free-born man strike the body of another free-born man or equal rank, he shall pay 1 gold mina. All right, so that is all I have for you today. Hopefully you learned a little bit about Hammurabi's code and what we can tell from Hammurabi's code, not only about his rules and his justice system, but also about the society in ancient Babylon. Don't forget to do today, you have your exit ticket. You can use the video, you can go back. Again, open book is totally fine. You have quiz 1.9 and checkpoint 110 due today at the end of the day as well. And then Monday, assignment 1.9 and quiz 112 are due. If you have any questions, don't forget to email me. That information you can find, if you don't have it, is in the OHS under contact information or teacher information. It's also in the previous slides before, which I uploaded. Again, if you have any questions, reach out, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have a great weekend.